Good evening and welcome to a special edition of our National Organized to Win broadcast. I'm Hal Ginsberg, a regional coordinator here with Our Revolution. Tonight's topic, the freedom to vote. We'll be discussing new legislation to defend our democracy and repel the Republican war on voters with Senator Jeff Merkley, Representative Mondaire Jones, Helen Butler, and Elizabeth Hira. As we count down to 8:30, tell us your name and where you are from in the chat. Tonight's call is very important. As we head into the 2022 midterms, 18 Republican state legislatures have passed laws to restrict voting rights. If Democrats in Congress fail to nullify those state laws and implement federal standards in their place, the midterms will be devastating for Democrats up and down the ballot. Again, I do ask you to tell us your name and where you are from in the chat. We've got Zach from Virginia, and he has a note for us. Voting rights are so important. Lauren Brown is here from Maryland. Francis in Boca Raton, Florida. Andrew from California. Royna in Dallas, Texas, and Mike in Indianapolis, Indiana. Leona is here from rural Kempner, Texas. And we've got more names, but as the call is building, I want to urge you to check out the latest edition of the Revolution Report, our weekly progressive insider newsletter, which is delivered straight to your inbox on Saturdays and Mondays. The link to the latest edition is in the chat. I also want to urge those of you joining on the phones, if you want a more interactive experience, please join our virtual community and transfer into the Zoom room. Just click to ourrev.us/Zoom. And again, please tell us your name and where you are from in the chat. I see Cindy is here from Seattle, Tony Easter in St. Louis, Missouri, Richard Brown from Maryland, Glenda in St. Louis, Lucero in Columbia, South Carolina, Judith from Springfield, Kaylee in Wisconsin, and there are many more names, but we only have so much time before we're going to get going to the guests and, of course, our great hosts. Thank you all for joining. Before we get going, though, it's important to remember that Our Revolution is 100% funded by you, our members. Over the past 5 years, we've become America's leading grassroots-funded political organization, and now we're on the cusp of securing life-changing legislation. Thanks to all of you. If you are already a member, thank you. You are the reason any of this is even possible. And if not, don't vote. Our revolution is where the fight is. We're able to hold politicians accountable, campaign on our issues, elect progressives, and transform the party because of your support. Get it on the action and become a member right now by clicking on ourrev.us/2021 member. And if you're on the phone, press *3 and an operator will take down your info. If you signed up to be a member, tell us in the chat. To everyone who's just joined the call, good evening and welcome to our Monday night Organized to Win call. Tonight, we're talking about the freedom to vote. We'll be discussing new legislation to defend our democracy and repel the Republican war on voters with Senator Jeff Merkley, Representative Mondaire Jones, Helen Butler, and Elizabeth Hira. For those in the Zoom room, again, tell us all your name and where you're from in the chat. Even if I can't call you out, we all want to see who you are. For those of you joining on the phones, if you want the most interactive experience possible, join our virtual community and transfer into the Zoom room. Just go to ourrev.us/Zoom. Let me welcome Sergeant Anthony Edward Lewis in the U.S. Army. He is in Michigan City, Indiana, retired. Gina in St. Louis, Paula in Silicon Valley, Barry in Toledo, Ava in Glendale, California. That's the 28th District, Representative Adam Schiff, and we've got Richard Rodriguez and Joliet. We're just about to start tonight's Organized to Win call. Let me just get rid of a few housekeeping items right now. If you have a question for our guests and you're on the phone, press *3 and an operator will take it down. In the Zoom room, put your questions in the Q&A. And if you want to join our Zoom room from your phone, please just transfer to ourrev.us/Zoom for the most interactive experience. Once again, ourrev.us/Zoom. And with that, let me bring up our co-host for the evening, Our Revolution Executive Director, Joseph Gevargiz.
Thank you, Hal, and welcome to all our revolutionaries out there. My name is Joseph Gevargiz. I'm the Executive Director of Our Revolution. I'll be your co-host for this special edition of our Monday night Organized to Win call. Tonight, we're zeroing in on the Freedom to Vote Act that was just introduced in the United States Senate. Ahead of the 2022 midterms, 18 GOP-controlled state legislators have enacted draconian restrictions on ballot access. And that means it's now up to us. It's now up to us to repel the Republican war on voting rights. That's why Our Revolution is partnering with the Declaration for American Democracy to pass federal standards to protect the franchise. In a moment, I'll introduce my co-host, Jana Morgan, who serves as the coalition's director. We'll also be joined by a panel of 4 leaders in the fight for voting rights. United States Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon, United States Representative Mondaire Jones from New York, Helen Butler from the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, and Elizabeth Hira with the Brennan Center for Justice. But before we talk about how Democrats need to protect the freedom to vote ahead of next year's midterms, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the need for Democrats to deliver on healthcare, climate, and their other bold campaign promises so that we, the people, actually have a good reason to go to the polls in 2022. That's why progressives are facing off against corporate Democrats in the battle over the budget on Capitol Hill right now. As Bernie said, this bill promises to be the most consequential piece of legislation for the American working class since the New Deal and the era of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, brothers and sisters, what's at stake in this legislation? Well, you know what's at stake? What's at stake is this: expanding Medicare to cover millions more Americans, taking bold action to avert the climate catastrophe that is upon us already, taking action to expand free community college and free pre-K, providing home care to the disabled and the elderly, and so much more. So, who would be against this game-changing, life-altering legislation? Who would be against investing in the well-being of the American people? Well, I've got a list, and that starts with Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, Stephanie Murphy, Josh Gottheimer, Kurt Schrader, and other members of Congress who are not on our program. That's why Our Revolution is taking the fight directly to these so-called Democrats who'd rather protect the pocketbooks of their corporate donors at the expense of their constituents. Our members are hitting the streets right now to demand lower drug prices, to demand an end to all fossil fuel subsidies, to demand that the rich pay their fair share in taxes, and of course, to demand that we get health care for more Americans. We are demanding that our progressive priorities stay in the budget bill. It's an all-out battle over the budget, and brothers and sisters, we cannot relent. And a little bit more about our strategy. Not only are we organizing on the outside, we're also organizing on the inside. Our revolution is standing with Bernie and the Congressional Progressive Caucus as they prepare to force the vote on the $3.5 trillion budget bill. With the deadline fast approaching, our progressive bloc in Congress is prepared to withhold their vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which only tackles roads and bridges, until Bernie's budget bill, which has our progressive priorities within it, until that bill passes. Brothers and sisters, the bottom line is this: either both bills pass or neither does. And as we, as a movement, head into the home stretch in this battle over the budget, we need your help. We need your help to make sure that our priorities stay in the final version of the budget bill. We need you to pick up your phone, use the link in the chat, and call your member of Congress and tell them to hold the line against corporate Democrats. Again, the link is rrev.us/budget fight. Use the link in the chat and let's fight to pass the most transformative legislation since the New Deal. Now let's pivot to the next key battle, voting rights. We all know that ex-President Trump and the GOP are gearing up for 2022 by making false claims about voter fraud and passing state-level laws to restrict voting rights. But let's be clear. This is not really about electoral fraud. There isn't any. This is really about Republicans giving themselves an electoral edge. They're trying to tip the scales in their favor. Democrats in Congress tried to fight back against this war on voters earlier this year with the For the People Act. But the Republicans filibustered the bill and it died an untimely death in the Senate. The good news is that voting rights are making a comeback on Capitol Hill this week with the Freedom to Vote Act. For more on this legislation, I want to introduce my co-host for tonight's town hall, Jana Morgan, who is the director of the Declaration for American Democracy. Jana, it is so wonderful to be partnering with you on this important issue. Tell us a little bit about DFAD and tell us more about the Freedom to Vote legislation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe, for that great introduction. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight for this program. My name again is Jana Morgan, and I'm the director of the Declaration for American Democracy. We are a coalition of more than 230 organizations representing tens of millions of Americans nationwide, working together to realize the promise of our democracy by passing legislation that will transform our political system into one that works for us. And we are very excited today to talk about the recently introduced Freedom to Vote Act. This bold legislation will protect the freedom to vote, end partisan gerrymandering, and reduce the power of big money special interests in politics, upholding the key pillars of the For the People Act, as this is that next iteration. And I'm so excited to have the For the People Act's lead sponsor, Senator Merkley, joining us tonight as well. Our nation needs this transformative reform package to protect our freedom to vote, to guarantee congressional districts are drawn to give fair representation to all, and to prevent billionaires from buying elections. Now, you are all joining us here today because you know that American democracy is in crisis. 18 states have enacted 30 laws this year that will make it harder for Americans, especially Black and Brown folks, to vote. And without passing bold national voting rights protections immediately, these dangerous state laws could threaten the safety and the integrity of the 2022 midterm elections. On top of that, last month's release of 2020 census data started the clock for states to begin drawing new congressional maps for their congressional districts. And without the protection in the Freedom to Vote Act, millions of Americans are facing another decade where politicians get to pick their voters instead of the other way around because of partisan gerrymandering. Our country right now is at risk of disenfranchising millions of Americans as a result. We can't wait any longer. We need you all to make your voices heard and to demand action on the Freedom to Vote Act right now. Before recess, Majority Leader Schumer committed to making voting rights the first order of business. And we need to continue to contact our elected representatives to make sure that they hold a vote on the Freedom to Vote Act as soon as possible. Now, we know that Senate Democrats are united and committed to taking up and passing voting rights legislation. And we also know that Republicans will continue to obstruct and block even debate on this legislation through the use of the filibuster. So what we really want to hear from our leaders is, what is the vision to overcome the Jim Crow filibuster so that we can finally pass this popular legislation and get us closer to transforming our democracy into one that is of, by, and for the people. So I am super excited to be working with all of you to make this vision of a political system that works for us all finally a reality. So I'll turn it back over now to Joseph, who can tell you about the best way to join us in this fight.
Thank you, Jana. Again, that was Jana Morgan. She is the director of the Declaration for American Democracy. Our revolution and DFAD are partnering to repel the GOP war on voters, and we need your help. We need your voice to get Congress to pass the Freedom to Vote bill. We are going to be phone banking voters in key states and encouraging them to contact their United States senators. This is one of the most important things that we can do right now to defend our democracy and protect voting rights. I want to encourage all of you to sign up for a shift in using the link in the chat. Again, sign up for a phone bank and make your voice heard on this important issue. And with that, I want to go to our first guest this evening, who is United States Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon. He is a longtime friend of our revolution. He is a co-sponsor of the Freedom to Vote Act. He was a leader in the fight to pass the For the People Act, and he is a leader in the fight against the filibuster, which has rigged our democracy against we, the people. Senator Merkley, welcome to our Monday night organizing call. Tell us a little bit about the state of play on the Freedom to Vote Act.
Joseph, you bet. Great to be with you and Jana with DFAD and our revolution. And most importantly, with the hundreds of all of you out there who are going to make a difference in saving our democracy in the next few weeks, helping us get this Freedom to Vote Act passed. You know, as we went into the summer, we were just immersed in the For the People Act. I've been working on it for years. We had 49 sponsors. We had took on the dark money. It took on the gerrymandering. It took on the defense of the ballot box, but it had 49 sponsors. We need 50. So over the summer, 8 of us worked meeting after meeting after meeting, reworking the provisions, taking the advice of Secretary of States and election officials, debating what would really make a difference. I'll tell you what we have. We have a new bill, a new constellation of how the sponsors are lined up, and it does the same 3 big things. It stops billionaires from buying elections. It stops gerrymandering in its tracks. And most importantly, it defends the ballot box. And it does something else, because a whole bunch of new strategies emerged from those 18 states passing 30 laws to obstruct access to ballot box. And so we have an election subversion section of this bill that now protects our poll workers. It ends mass challenges where one person can stand at a precinct and intimidate and challenge every single voter coming to vote. It protects the local election boards from being taken over by state legislatures. It still preserves records. It still has cybersecurity. It still has paper ballots. So we got a new name, but it's the same battle to save our country, to save the vision of For the People. So Now we have 50 senators on board. And we have there in this several week period, Joe Manchin and others are reaching out, trying to get Republicans on board. After all, it's in the DNA of Americans to have access to the ballot. We thought we had resolved this nationally in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. It's unbelievable. We're turning the clock back to states doing laws to block Black Americans and poor Americans and Hispanic Americans and college students and tribal members from being able to vote. But there we are in this strange, incredibly warped regression fueled by the Trumpers. And we have to end it by getting this passed. So what's going to happen now? Well, after this period of trying to get Republicans on board, we'll either have them on board and go forward with 60 votes, or most likely, most things very unlikely, we'll get 10 Republicans, because the Republican Party at the highest levels, not among the necessarily polling Republicans across the country, but the highest levels, the Republican power structure likes gerrymandering. They like billionaires buying elections with dark money, and they really, really like blocking targeted groups from voting. They are in that Jim Crow world of the past, and no shame about it. So we'll have a test vote probably next week to try to move the bill forward. And that test vote will not have 60 votes to close debate on the motion to proceed. And then we're going to have to say, okay, so the 50 of us have to get together and say, how are we going to honor our oath to the Constitution? How are we going to get this passed? Are we going to do a carve out for voting rights? There's been a lot of carve outs in the filibuster. Well, we have Leader McConnell, who says, how would you dare do a carve out? Well, he did a carve out to do tax cuts for the rich. He did a carve out for the Supreme Court. He did a carve out to change 30 hours of debate on lower court judges to 2 hours. And so carve out is a possibility. I hope, however, that we will adopt some form of the talking filibuster. We don't want the Senate to be a place where the majority rolls over the top of the minority. The minority should be able to slow things down and say, hey, we got to read the bill. We want Americans to read the bill. We want the press to see the bill. We want to have amendment opportunities. We want to have the ability to try to work out a compromise. All that's legitimate. And the talking filibuster allows the minority to slow down the bill. But we also don't want to tyranny the minority where the minority exercises a veto. In this kind of big war between the Democrats and the Republicans, the ability to veto in the hands of Mitch McConnell means a death blow to everything we care about on housing, on healthcare, on education, on living wage jobs, on workers' rights, on taking on climate change, on equality of opportunity for every LGBTQ American. So I'm hoping that we do that talking filibuster that says, yes, the minority can slow things down, but no, they can't ultimately exercise a veto, because this will be important in other battles as well. What about the PRO Act for labor? What about the Equality Act? What about health care or health rights for all women in America to counteract Texas? So that's where we're headed. It'd be great to have the 60 votes, but if we don't have them from Republicans, we don't really expect them, then the 50 of us are going to have to find out a way to get this passed.
So, Senator, this is very exciting because what you're laying out is not just a pathway to pass the freedom to vote legislation, but also a pathway to move on other long neglected priorities, like the PRO Act, like other things that we care about. Now, that being said, for our audience who may not be completely familiar with the ins and outs of Senate procedure, tell us about the talking filibuster and why is that more preferable than the system as it's set up right now?
All right, so it used to be that there was a courtesy in the Senate saying, we'll listen to everyone speak before we take a vote. So it honors the minority, it honors every voice. That became abused by folks who said, hey, we're going to use that to block one thing, and that's political rights for Black Americans. So that's the dark history of the filibuster. They wrapped prejudice in some version of saying this is about freedom of speech and courtesy of listening to the minority. So then and when they did that, by the way, filibuster, it refers to people speaking. term actually means piracy. It comes from freebooter. So the pirates take over the Senate, block a vote from happening by speaking at length, which means one, it's public, and two, it takes a whole lot of effort, and three, you have to do it continuously. Then in 1975, all of that was blown up when a rule change inadvertently said, because we now have to have 60 votes to close debate, those who want to block debate never have to show up. In fact, they don't have to vote. As long as the majority doesn't have 60, they can't proceed. So now you have this silent, hidden obstruction. We still call it a filibuster, but it doesn't look like a filibuster. There's no Jimmy Stewart in the well of the Senate on this one. Or Jefferson Smith, excuse me. Jimmy Stewart playing Jefferson Smith in the movie. And so the talking bloster says, okay, look, you want to block a vote, you have to stand and speak continuously. And if there's a break, we go to a simple majority. Now, there's various versions of it that we could adjust and add, but ultimately there is a path after a considerable length of time, which might be many weeks, to get to a simple majority vote. It's public. It takes a whole lot of effort by those who want to obstruct, and ultimately you can get to simple majority vote.
And Senator Merkley, it sounds like in some ways what you're saying is we want the Senate to return not necessarily to original tradition, but to an earlier tradition, which is the talking filibuster, which we believe we can defeat.
That's right. Exactly.
And so, Senator, let me ask you this. What can all of the activists around the country who are listening, what can they do to help move this legislation forward?
Well, send the message to every member of the Senate that there is no excuse for failing to defend the right to vote. This is a core principle of America. It's embedded in the very vision of what it means to be a for the people or we the people nation, is every person having a chance to help guide the future. And so it's just like we didn't get it right at the start in our initial Constitution, but we fixed it over time, saying we're getting closer and closer, and ultimately then Black Americans who've been enslaved, Native Americans who had been excluded, women Americans who had not been allowed to vote. We got to that vision. We have to defend that vision, that core principle. Second thing, say no excuses. Don't blame Mitch McConnell. Because you know what? Mitch McConnell, when he wanted to do tax cuts for the rich, he changed the rules. When he wanted to ram far-right corporate judges into the Supreme Court, he changed the rules. When he wanted to accelerate by a factor of 15 the appointment of judges to lower courts from the Federalist Society, he changed the rules. It is now essentially Republicans view this like, if you're flipping a quarter, heads, the Republican win, tails, the Democrats lose. That's the system we have right now, in which our priorities are blocked by the filibuster and Republican priorities are not. If we have any guts, any vision, any grit, we have to carry this fight. We have to carry this fight and pass this bill and find a way to get it done and to balance the scales so that in the future, it isn't a system. The Senate is not a place rigged for the powerful over the people the way it is right now.
Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us this evening.
Thank you. Take care and good night.
Senator Merkley is the staunchest defender of democracy in the United States Senate, and you heard him. He needs our help to convince his colleagues to move the freedom to vote bill through the United States Senate. Brothers and sisters, we've got to go all out to get this bill through the Senate and on to President Biden's desk. And you can take action by signing up to phonebank. The link is in the chat. And with that, I want to turn it over back to my co-host, Jana Morgan, to bring up our next guest.
Thanks so much, Joseph. And thank you again to Senator Merkley for being such a stalwart champion of the For the People Act and being one of the visionary senators who were able to negotiate and create that next iteration, the Freedom to Vote Act. Your leadership is instrumental and we so appreciate it. Next, I want to welcome Helen Butler, the Executive Director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Now, Helen, Georgia is ground zero in the GOP war on voters. And after tireless efforts of organizers, Georgia voters helped to defeat Donald Trump and shift the balance of power in the Senate by electing pro-democracy reformers like Senators Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. We know all of the roadblocks and hurdles that were set up for Georgia voters in the 2020 election. Now, of course, we've all heard about the horrible anti-voter laws that have been passed there that even restrict people from getting food and water, despite deliberate attempts to decrease polling places, making people stand in line for 5, 6, 12 hours to vote. Can you talk a little bit more about the GOP's right-wing voter suppression strategy in Georgia and why the Freedom to Vote Act is so necessary to counteract it? Helen.
Well, thank you, Jana. I'm so glad to be here with you all tonight to talk about. I'm excited about this Freedom to Vote Act, as I have been talking about For the People Act. Here it is time to talk about Freedom to Vote Act. Of course, Georgia has been ground zero. We've been the model for every voter suppression law that has been introduced throughout the United States. So here we are. But let me tell you, despite all of our work and hard work to get our 2 U.S. senators in place, we've been fighting this battle and we'll continue to fight this battle. But we know that the Freedom to Vote Act will do a lot of things for us. Number one, it will defer this takeover strategy that our legislature has enacted in Georgia and that are in all of the pieces of legislation that has been introduced. As Senator Merkley said, they will no longer be able to take over all of the boards of elections, including supervisors, and being able to take over every step of the process of voting, from registration to putting people on roll, to who gets absentee ballot gets counted, who gets counted, who certifies the election. That's a critical part of this Freedom to Vote Act. But also it will allow us to have drop boxes. It won't restrict the ban on absentee drop boxes. Absentee voting will be enhanced with the Freedom to Vote. There will be an extended deadline for your ballot to get in place 7 days after election day for your ballot to get to the local boards of elections to be counted. Those are just some of the things in this bill that will make it much, much better and allow people to exercise their right to vote. Of course, you'll also have an opportunity. Right now, we used to have in Georgia what we call a rollover absentee ballot process, where we could be on the rolls to get absentee ballot automatically. That is now codified in the Freedom to Vote. So that would be a part of this process. We have automatic voter registration. We'll have that in place. Provisional ballots, it enhances how they will be counted. These are things that will be able for our citizens to freely exercise their right to vote. And we must have this Freedom to Vote Act along with the John Lewis Advancement Voting Acts, because as it's been mentioned, redistricting is right in place and they are drawing the lines. And so we need all of the protections in place. This new filibuster process, whether it's the speaking filibuster or doing away with the filibuster, we've got to have it because we must have that right to vote. Our organization was formed by Dr. Joseph Lowery, the dean of the Civil Rights Movement, who along with Dr. King and so many other civil rights leaders were able to get the 1965 Voting Rights Act in place. And we're trying to continue that legacy of ensuring people of color are able to exercise their right to vote, to have ballots in language. We are there to protect that right. And this Freedom to Vote Act puts a lot of those provisions back in place. And we want people to really be engaged to make sure that they call their senators, tell them it's a must. It is not a maybe. It's a must that we must have in place. We've got to have the Freedom to Vote Act. There will be minimum standards for vote counting, ballot security, and you've talked about paper ballots, all of those things that will make voting easy and accessible and fair to all voters. And that's what we're about. And that's why freedom to vote is so critical. So get on that phone. Don't get weary. Don't get tired. We've got to stand up and fight for our rights. And this is our Selma moment.
Thank you so much, Miss Helen Butler. You are inspirational as always. And thank you for the incredible work that you are doing in Georgia. You really are an inspiration to all of us as we continue to do this fight. And I know you've been in it a long time, and we so appreciate you. Thanks so much. And you all heard Miss Helen Butler. It isn't a maybe, it is a must that we pass the Freedom to Vote Act. So if you want to be a part of the solution, you can take action by signing up to phonebank. We need senators to hear from their constituents. So we need you to sign up to phonebank. You can go to rrev.us/DFAD. PB. There's also going to be information sent around in a newsletter later that will give you all of these links again in case you're on the phone or you can't click it right now. But easy, rrev.us/DFAD PB. So we need you to call senators in our target states and pressure them to move as soon as possible on the Freedom to Vote Act. Sign up for a shift with this link, and then in the chat, let us know when you're going to be phone banking. Get your friends to join. We need you all out there. This is vital stuff for our democracy. And if we still haven't gotten this passed by mid-October, which I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we get this thing done and we're ready to roll in the next couple of weeks. But in the event that it doesn't, and the Senate has refused to move these bills forward due to Republican obstructionism on the filibuster, we're going to be putting out all the stops to make sure we get this bill across the finish line. That's why a broad coalition of organizations are joining together to plan an exciting relay event that will start in West Virginia and end with a rally in Washington, D.C. at the state capitol. You can join the relay starting on October 21st or join us for the rally on October 23rd. So if you want to learn more, we'll be sending more information out in the newsletter, but you can also go to bit.ly. So it's bit.ly/October Action to learn more. That's bit.ly/October Action to learn more. I'm going to turn it back over now to my esteemed co-host, Joseph. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Jana. We've heard from some remarkable people, Senator Jeff Merkley, Helen Butler from the Georgia People's Agenda, and we've got two more remarkable guests coming up. First, Representative Mondaire Jones will be with us. But before that, I want to bring up Elizabeth Hira. She is a policy fellow at the Brennan Center. She is a policy counsel, at the Brennan Center. She focuses on democracy reform. What's significant about Elizabeth's background is she used to be a lawyer for the United States Congress. And when she was in Congress, she helped draft H.R. 1, which is the precursor of the legislation that we are talking about today. There is no better expert to have on this call about the details of what's in the Freedom to Vote Act than Elizabeth here. Welcome to our call, Elizabeth. Tell us a little bit about what's in this legislation. How does it differ from the For the People Act, and what will its impact be?
Thank you so much for having me. And I am thrilled because I have the unique privilege of getting to share in this very dark climate some fantastic news. Many of you are here because you know that we have seen in 49 states over 400 bills attempting to suppress your right to vote. And I understand how that can be overwhelming and scary, but the fantastic news is we don't need to fight 49 fights. We need to fight one fight. And that fight is the Freedom to Vote Act, which we're here to talk to you about tonight. So with this limited time, I want to do two things. I want to get you up to date and smart on the content of the bill. And then I want to really convey to you the context of this bill and why it matters in this moment, because you are the ambassadors that are going to make this happen. So with that said, I'm going to tick through a list. starting with automatic voter registration that you just opt into at the DMV and other designated agencies, and will literally add millions of Americans who are eligible onto the rolls. Same thing for same-day voter registration, which we know will disproportionately benefit young people and people of color who are often left out with these sort of arbitrary limitations that we currently experience. This will allow for 2 weeks of early voting, both before and after work and even on the weekends. So whether you miss the bus after work doesn't dictate your right to vote. It will also allow for the voter registration information to be disseminated after naturalization ceremonies. These guys really thought of everything and packed it into this bill. It will pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds, so they are automatically on the rolls when they turn 18. It will expand and reauthorize grant programs that make sure that Americans with disabilities have the same access to the vote that other folks do. And most importantly, it provides funding for all the states to make sure that they're actually in compliance with these big requirements. It's not just a lot of talk without support. It will, for the states that do have a voter ID requirement, believe it or not only does it expand the list of permissible ID, it actually provides for the state to make sure that folks have that ID free of charge from the state. There's vote by mail, there's secure drop boxes, and it even protects things like curbside voting that we saw was so important in the pandemic. I love this part, and I know that you will too. It restores the franchise to folks who are formerly incarcerated and back living in our communities. That's 3.9 million Americans, 1.6 of whom are people of color. It prohibits interfering with voter registration and really prevents election subversion. It is putting restrictions on the removal of election administrators and increasing protections for election workers, as well as prohibiting voter intimidation generally. And exactly those horrible things that we saw in the 2020 election, a lot of those are just stopped directly by the bill. We make sure that folks can get food and water when they're in line with this bill, and it even just limits lines to 30 minutes. That's the little stuff. The big picture stuff that's amazing is a full-on prevention of partisan gerrymandering, clear and neutral standards for congressional redistricting, strengthening protections in that redistricting process for communities of color, and it even sets up judicial remedies. Even maps that are being put in place now can be quickly challenged in court and actually fixed. Those things as well sort of give the backdrop to one of my favorite pieces of the bill, which is what I want to share with you. You're here because you know that our freedom to vote matters. It's right there in the title. But the other thing that this bill does that I cannot raise enough for you guys as ambassadors to share is that it's the first time I've ever seen a bill fundamentally ask the question, what infrastructural changes would we need to make to create a democracy that actually reflects the American people? If there's one soundbite that you take away from me today, I want you to remember that our Congress is the most diverse we have ever seen in American history, the most diverse. And that diverse Congress is 77% white and 74% male. The last time that we did a survey like this, we learned that fewer than 5% of people in the Congress had ever held a blue-collar job. 2/3 of the Senate are millionaires. I share those statistics with you, not just because diversity matters for diversity's sake. When you start to put the numbers together and you realize who is sitting in these seats, you realize that who is actually at the table dictates what policies get lifted up. And that is why we don't have things like paid family leave or universal health care or things that matter to everyday Americans. So when we're talking about this bill, we're not just talking about our freedom to vote. We're talking about things like small dollar public financing that will bring everyday Americans, like Mr. Jones, who's going to talk to us, to the table. And you all know better than anybody what that manifests like. It matters a lot that Miss Cori Bush experienced being unhoused because that gave her the passion and the ability to sleep on those steps and change what was possible for people at risk of eviction in America. That is actually what at stake. This is not just saying, hey, who should get to vote, whether or not they are people of color. Nope, that question was settled a long time ago. What this bill is saying is, what if our democracy reflected you as an American? And the power that you're bringing is not just protecting our right to vote, it's building a country that looks like all of us and fights for all of us. And I will just quickly close on this note. I had the privilege of getting to work on this bill literally alongside hundreds of other people in the House and the Senate last cycle, but the thousands of people like you who will make it possible for getting over the line. And the day that we passed it, even though I know my poor mom was like, I don't even know that we're going to get you home for Christmas. You guys are working so hard. I thought, the sky is going to open and it's going to be amazing and people are going to care. When we passed it, this thing was maybe page 4 news of the New York Times. They didn't even bother to name the bill. The fact that you all are here tonight, that there are hundreds of you on this call, that Michelle Obama is out here advocating for it, that people literally all around the country are literally tens of thousands of us were marching in the streets for this bill. This is a different moment than we have ever seen. You are making that possible. So I want to arm you with the facts about what's in it and just remind you to be inspired by yourselves and what you were creating, because it is coming to a new day in America, and that is thanks to you. So thanks so much, Joseph, for having me, and all of you for being here.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. There's a lot of questions in the chat. We're going to try to get to a couple, at least one if we have time. So this comes from Nancy. She's asking about the gerrymandering that has already happened. And let's expand that. There's already been a lot of anti-voter measures, including gerrymandering, that have moved forward. Does this legislation allow us to go back, redraw those lines, or go back and correct things that have been broken?
It does, but I need to emphasize that that's why it's urgent to get it done as soon as possible. As I mentioned, that there are judicial remedies for us to take currently drawn maps that don't actually meet the standards that are being established and make sure that we can challenge them in court. But the faster we can get this done, the faster we can stop these bad things from happening in the first place. And it's also important for folks to remember, this will go along with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which will stop future horrible things from happening. But the things that are being passed right now, we need the Freedom to Vote Act to stop them in their tracks. And you should not despair at all. We can fix a lot of the worst things that could be coming down the pike, but we need to move with urgency. And that's why we need your support right now more than ever.
Elizabeth, another question, and it's this. Are folks concerned that this bill will face judicial challenge, this law will get held up in the Supreme Court, and 2022 will be in the hands of the Republicans because they're already rigging the rules?
Not to be a lawyer about it, but I'm coming with the footnotes, and I want to refer everybody to the Elections Clause of the United States Constitution. We are empowered to do great work to protect American elections. And so I just need folks to hold on to the fact that people in Congress literally for years have been working on this bill. Mr. John Lewis, Mr. Sarbanes always says, wrote the first couple hundred pages of this bill. We are not in the habit of wasting our time by creating unconstitutional bills. And so not only are we empowered by the Constitution, the folks that have literally been spending thousands of hours on this for years have put together a package that we strongly believe is constitutional. So you can rest assured that some of the things that you're hearing about criticisms of the bill, about its overreach and all of that stuff, is because these folks who are against this, extremist politicians who are against the common sense reforms in this bill, don't actually have good arguments against it. So you're hearing a lot of lies, and you're hearing a lot of sort of distracting arguments, because frankly, and I can't emphasize this enough, all the polling shows that a majority of Americans, regardless of their party, are supportive of the stuff that's in this bill. There is bipartisan support for this bill, to the point that Jane Meyer is writing articles about how freaked out Republicans are, that even Republican leaders are, by the fact that Republican voters are in support of the common sense measures in this bill, like getting billionaires out of our elections. It's not rocket science. And I think what I want to encourage people to remember is that it feels like they're scrambling right now because they are afraid. And that means that we are more close to success than we've ever been.
Elizabeth here with the Brennan Center. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And with that, I want you to pay special attention to what Elizabeth said. We have a shot to advance our agenda, and we know this shot matters because the other side is afraid. They are sounding the alarm bells. And that means we've got to double down on our efforts to get the Freedom to Vote bill over the finish line. For all of you who are listening, I encourage you, sign up for a phone bank. We're reaching out to voters in key states and encouraging them to reach out to their United States senators. That is the organizing that matters in this moment. The link is in the chat. Sign up, make your voice heard. Again, thank you, Elizabeth, and Jana, back to you.
Thank you so much, Joseph, and thank you again, Elizabeth. It's always a pleasure to be working with you. You're such an incredible policy mind, and I think you've done an amazing job explaining just how important the Freedom to Vote Act is and the way it is going to be a game changer. So next up, I have the pleasure of introducing a progressive powerhouse, Representative Mondaire Jones of New York. Representative Jones has centered voting rights in his service in Congress. Representative Jones, welcome. It is so great to have you for this town hall on such an important issue. I want to start off by asking, I understand that you worked with Senator John Ossoff in crafting some key elements of the larger Freedom to Vote Act. Can you tell us a little bit more about the provisions you played a specific hand in?
Well, thank you so much, Jana, for that very kind introduction. I always appreciate the opportunity to be with you and this remarkable coalition. And I'm especially honored to join you all tonight alongside Senator Merkley, who has led the Senate's visionary work from day one, and a few of the leaders of our powerful movement, the great Arndrea, Helen, Butler, and of course, Elizabeth Hira. Our democracy stands at a crossroads, and we've reached what may be our last chance to rescue this nation from radical, right-wing, racist minority rule. Our nation and our world can ill afford to allow QAnon conspiracy theorists who refuse to certify election results to disenfranchise their way back into power. Those of us here today understand that if the Senate and the White House do not act, the road before us is one where democracy dies in darkness. That is why from the start of this Congress, as you just heard, we have had a plan to rescue and revitalize our democracy. First, craft comprehensive democracy legislation that can unite our majorities in the House and in the Senate. Second, abolish or at least reform the filibuster so that we can keep our promise to protect our democracy without compromising with the very people who threaten our democracy. And third, of course, deliver that bill to President Biden's desk in time to enact this transformative legislation before it is too late. With last week's introduction of the Freedom to Vote Act, we have finally finished that first phase. For the first time, Democrats stand united behind transformative democracy legislation that can meet this moment. Senator Manchin himself is a proud original co-sponsor of this bill, the Freedom to Vote Act. It is a bill that includes many of the most important provisions of the For the People Act, while adding new ones to address the surging threat of election subversion. Like the For the People Act, the Freedom to Vote Act would establish automatic and same-day voter registration, adding upwards of 50 million new voters to the polls. It would ban partisan gerrymandering and ending Republicans' unearned power in the House of Representatives. It would bring back dark money into the light with new disclosure requirements, and it would empower states to amplify the voices of small donors by funding small dollar public matching programs in every state that wants one. To your point, Jana, I am especially proud that the Freedom to Vote Act contains My Right to Vote Act, the first affirmative guarantee of the right to vote in our nation's history. For the first time, federal courts will be required to treat the right to vote as the fundamental right that it is. That means that no government, state, local, or federal, could make it harder to vote without proving that doing so is the least restrictive way to protect our elections. No longer can the far right use the big lie to justify racist voter suppression. Now, the Freedom to Vote Act is not perfect. I wish, frankly, that it looked more like the For the People Act. But make no mistake, the Freedom to Vote Act will be transformative anyway if we enact it. So now is the time for phase two, abolishing, or at the very least, reforming the filibuster. Here is the reality. The Senate could pass the Freedom to Vote Act tomorrow. But as you know, a few senators are standing in our way. These senators cling to the delusion that 10 Republicans will join them in the fight for our democracy, even as Republicans drag our democracy further into crisis. These senators have found comfort in the silence of a White House that simply has not called for an end to the Jim Crow filibuster, but that is changing too, if you look at the public reporting in recent days. With the introduction of the Freedom to Vote Act, that silence may be about to end, as I just mentioned. It was recently reported that President Biden has assured congressional leaders that when the time is right, he is ready to start making phone calls to urge reluctant senators to end the filibuster or make an exception to it. More specific to end, as I just mentioned. It was recently a testament to your voices and to the outspokenness of people like me in Congress. Now we must press ahead because power concedes nothing without a demand. And so it is time for us to demand that President Biden call on the Senate to abolish or reform the filibuster and pass the Freedom to Vote Act. Nothing is more important in this moment. We need all of you to rise up and to speak with one voice and to say, Mr. President, the time is now. So start making those phone calls because we have literally no time to waste. If we are to save our democracy, there is no alternative. As I've said before, we cannot out-organize partisan gerrymanders. We can't just outvote a party that is committed to overturning the results when they are outvoted. And we had better not ask Black and brown voters to do twice as much to save our democracy when some people in Washington cannot be bothered to do half as much as they should as elected representatives. So we must pass the Freedom to Vote Act, and we've got to do it now. I'm so grateful to be here in community with the same people who have been fighting for a long time to save our democracy and who have played a critical role in getting us to this place where we are on the precipice of doing precisely what we as House Democrats and as Senate Democrats and as the President of the United States were all elected to do for our families, for our country, and indeed for the world.
Thank you so much, Representative Jones, for those inspiring remarks. And I think one thing I'd really touch on is the fact that there is a path forward. We are seeing increasing political will to make sure that this bill gets passed, the Freedom to Vote Act. So thank you for that. And thank you for your heartening words and telling folks what they can do to make sure we get this across the finish line. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
Great. And now I'm going to talk about some of the things Representative Jones just suggested. So we need you to help pass the Freedom to Vote Act and to repel this Republican war on voters. So we are phone banking in key states and encouraging people to call their U.S. senators. This is the most important thing that you can do right now to defend our democracy and to protect voting rights. So sign up with the link in the chat and let us know when you are going to phone bank. You can write it in the chat. When did you sign up for? The link, again, it's on the screen. It's rrev.us/DFADPB. Senators need to hear from their constituents. We need to make calls to voters in target states. So please sign up and take a shift. And what you can do, in addition to signing up to take a shift, is you can call your own senator. So if you go to our website, dfadcoalition.org, you can go to our Take Action page. That's dfadcoalition.org. And I'll talk through some of the actions you can take, or declarationforamericandemocracy.org. Go to our Take Action page. So you can see on the screen now, you can call your senator, dial that number, 1-888-453-3211. We provide you with a script. We let you know exactly what you need to say, and then you can hang up and call again and call your other senator. So we need to be doing these calls every day, not just for senators that we know already support the bill, because we know they do, but also to tell them we need to overcome the Jim Crow filibuster. We cannot let anything stand in our way. We cannot continue to ask people of color to do this fight for us. As Representative Jones has said, people have been fighting since the founding of this nation to realize the rights of our democracy. So we need to make sure that everyone is a part of this. So I want to see everyone making these phone calls. Next up, we are also asking people to call the White House. We have a number for that as well. That's on our Take Action page, dfadcoalition.org/take action. The White House comment line is open from Tuesday to Thursday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So there's a small window of time when you can be calling President Biden and Vice President Harris and saying, we need you to overcome the filibuster. We need you to use every level of power that the White House has to call the senators who are reluctant and to move things forward as fast as possible, because it is not right to be asking the same people who've been fighting for their rights since the founding of this nation to continue to do so. We cannot be out organizing voter suppression. We need laws to protect the fundamental right to vote. So call the White House and let them know. Next, another thing you can do is write an LTE in your local newspaper. We know that the more people hear from your friends, from your neighbors, that you support something, it can spread like a wildfire. So you have that influence. So use it in your local hometowns. Go for a regional newspaper, a local newspaper. We have a tool, just type in your zip code, and we have language that you can use for the Freedom to Vote Act. I see that it still says for the People Act. It will be updated in the next couple of hours, I think. So maybe pause, do that tomorrow. But send an LTE to your local newspaper. This is critical to showing broad support. And then finally, we want to make sure that if you want to participate in the October Relay and Rally, October 21st to the 23rd, that you sign up using the bit.ly/October action, and you will get more information about how you can participate. So a lot of great things you can do. Please pick 1, 2, 3, 4, all of the things. There is nothing too small that you can do, and we definitely appreciate all of you and all the great work that you are doing to help make this dream of a democracy that works for us all a reality. Thank you for your work. Joseph, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. That was Jana Morgan, Director of the Declaration for American Democracy. Our Revolution and DFAD are working together to make sure that we defend our fundamental right to vote and push back against the GOP war on workers ahead of the 2022 midterms. Look, this isn't about policy. This is purely about power. The Republicans know that they can use their power in the states to block our chances of winning. That's why we've got to use our power at the federal level. We control the U.S. House, we control the U.S. Senate, and we've got the White House. This is our moment to defend voting rights. So please get involved. If you missed Senator Merkley and his remarks at the top of the call, you can catch him again. He'll be joining Our Revolution Oregon on their statewide organizing call this Wednesday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. He'll be talking about the freedom to vote legislation. He'll be talking about fighting the filibuster. Again, if you want to catch Senator Merkley, if you want to ask him a question, you can do it on Wednesday. And finally, we're going to be keeping up our fight to push the battle over the budget over the finish line. All across the country, our activists are rallying. Today, Our Revolution joined with working